2 years ago, we presented some documents from India's spy agency indicating that the United States Central Intelligence Agency had notified their Indian counterpart of the potential attack. Earlier this year, a similar situation happened in Russia, which unfortunately resulted in a successful terrorist attack. Same with the spy agency of Egypt notifying Israel of the upcoming Hamas attack in 2023. Why is this happening, and why do governments sometimes fail to act on this intelligence? In this episode, we'll see what is threat reporting and duty to warn, the good, the bad, and the ugly of this practice in the intelligence world. Welcome to Tradecraft Sunday. Let's start with a common understanding. No intelligence professional likes seeing innocent people getting hurt. Whether this is from terrorist attacks, natural disasters, humanitarian crisis, or anything else. This is not to say that intelligence agencies haven't been involved in terrorist attacks before, or they won't be moving forward, because in some cases that does happen. But in general, this is the exception, not the rule. At the same time, no spy agency wants its sources and methods to be revealed to their enemy. Lastly, no politician wants to end up in the spotlight for withholding information that could have saved lots of lives, since it's almost certain that that will result in losing many voters. Actually, most politicians would love to just throw this hot potato to someone else, so that liability is no longer with them as soon as possible. That's called duty to warn in the legal space. In many countries, this is a legal obligation even for spy agencies. For example, in July 2015, then Director of National Intelligence James Clapper issued a directive to the agencies of the United States intelligence community that they had a duty to warn both US and non-US persons of impending harm against them. Another example is in Europe, where the European Convention on Human Rights, or ECHR, has a broad duty to protect life principle. Article 2 of the ECHR, called Right to Life, has influenced European intelligence agencies in their duty to inform individuals of credible threats. There are two challenges that have to be balanced by spy agencies and politicians that comply with this legislation. First, what can they share with another spy agency, even a hostile one, to avoid providing details that will expose how they got this intelligence in the first place? And secondly, when it's the right time to share it, since a hostile government could use it against them, like, they only notified us at the time of the attack, or something along these lines. Actually, in March 2024, former CIA officer Laura Thomas, who joined the National Clandestine Service as a case officer and managed to reach senior positions within the CIA, including as chief of base and other roles in the agency's headquarters, wrote this extensive thread on X talking about exactly this subject from first-hand experience. She wrote, "Curious about CIA's duty to warn protocols? I've delivered the duty to warn when I served CIA in the past. There is a lot of wrong information out there on it. Here is how it really works. Most people do not realize that CIA would notify individuals and adversarial countries of a potential threat, which is called duty to warn. It is taken seriously. If CIA comes across information that is credible and specific, then this duty to warn process is triggered. It is the ethical thing to do to prevent loss of innocent life, but it also sends a message to our adversaries about our knowledge and values. It may make a foreign intelligence officer from an adversarial country think, if they try to protect even those from enemy countries, maybe they really would take care of me and protect me if I were a clandestine source for them. The threat reporting must be credible and contain enough details on the timing, location, and/or perpetrators of the attack that there is reason to believe that sharing the information would prevent innocent loss of life, and there has to be a way to reasonably share it. When involved in previous duty to warn scenarios, I crafted the warning language in a way that provided as many details as possible, in order to aid the local person or authorities to stop the attack. Yet also kept the language broad enough so it didn't point to a specific source of the information, which the Russians or other adversaries, for example, would promptly track down and arrest, imprison, and likely execute if given enough clues. In past duty-to-warn situations, I notified CIA headquarters that I assessed that information I gathered reached the duty-to-warn threshold and outlined my plans for notifying the target to fulfill the duty to warn. The duty to warn should be given in a meaningful way that allows a person or local authorities to take action to stop the threat while also protecting CIA sources and methods. It could also be that CIA headquarters that comes across information that reached the duty to warn threshold, in which case headquarters would notify the field office or appropriate officer to deliver the warning. And after the duty to warn is carried out, the CIA officer who issued it documents it in official cable traffic that they fulfill the duty. A duty to warn from CIA is not the same as the Department of State's travel or advisory warnings, though they can be related, such as if State Department's information stems from HUMINT or SIGINT reporting, in which case State would work closely with CIA and or NSA to craft the warning language to protect sources and methods. CIA's own duty-to-warn process does not always involve State Department, as it is not the same as a public notification. Essentially, a duty-to-warn could run in parallel tracks, with CIA reaching out to an individual or foreign partner or adversary to provide a warning, possibly with additional details if they could be used by the individual or foreign entity to prevent the attack. In parallel, State would issue a public warning if they assessed that US citizens abroad would also be at significant risk, which would have been the case in Russia recently. US government agencies have to figure out how to characterize and share the information to both audiences without blowing the source. And despite what most think, almost all spy agencies do this to varying degrees, some more, some less. Actually, tomorrow we'll publish a video showing another such case when a Russian spy agency notified the Thai authorities of a terror plot, so don't miss this. But since the thread we just read was about the Crocus City Hall terrorist attack from March 22, 2024, here's a snippet from former CIA Deputy Director Michael Morell on CBS News commenting on CIA's approach to this and other similar cases.
So when the U.S. collects intelligence that is suggestive or points to a terrorist attack, the U.S. almost always informs the local government about that. I would imagine, John, in this case, that it was general in nature. My guess is that we collected intelligence from the Islamic State talking about a coming operation in Russia or a coming operation in Moscow. You'll remember when this first happened, we were actually concerned about a possible attack on the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. I imagine it was the same intelligence that, unfortunately resulted in this attack.
Although threat reporting is crucial to the safety and security globally, it doesn't always work. Talking about what can go wrong, let's see now why Russian intelligence didn't act on the CIA's threat report in this case. Firstly, as the former CIA Deputy Director said, we don't know how Russia used this intelligence, meaning it might be that they didn't ignore it. Certainly there is mistrust between CIA and FSB, especially considering that they were indirectly at war in Ukraine when this threat report was issued. So there is a chance that they either disregarded the report altogether or spent so much time vetting the received information that they failed to disrupt the attack. Or as BBC wrote, we do not yet know the exact nature of the information the US possessed or passed or how clear it was. Intelligence can often be vague and hard to act on. But the US has a vast intelligence gathering machine and watches the Islamic State closely. The branch suspected of the Moscow attack was also linked to one on US forces and civilians at Kabul airport in August 2021, as well as more recent deadly bombings in Iraq. Also later on, Russia asserted that the attackers had links to Ukrainian nationalists.
в результате работы с задержанными террористами, исследования изъятых у них технических устройств, анализа сведений о финансовых операциях, получены доказательства их связи с украинскими националистами. В распоряжении следствия имеются подтвержденные данные о поступлении исполнителям теракта значительных сумм денежных средств и криптовалюты из Украины, которые использовались при подготовке преступления.
So it could be that they simply trusted their internal intelligence more than CIA third report and failed to act on it when they received it. Unfortunately for the general public, such situations do happen from time to time and have deadly results for innocent people. Another recent example is that of the Hamas attack on Israel from October 2023. As we read from BBC, House Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee head Michael McCaul told reporters of the alleged warning, and continues, "We know that Egypt has warned the Israelis 3 days prior that an event like this could happen." Mr. McCaul told reporters following a closed-door intelligence briefing on Wednesday for lawmakers about the Middle East crisis, according to AFP news agency. "I don't want to get too much into classified, but a warning was given," the Texas Republican added. "I think the question was at what level." An Egyptian intelligence official told the Associated Press news agency this week that Cairo had repeatedly warned the Israelis something big was being planned from Gaza. "We have warned them an explosion of the situation is coming, and very soon, and it will be big, but they underestimated such warnings," said the official who spoke on condition of anonymity. The Cairo official said Israeli officials had played down the threat from Gaza, instead focusing on the West Bank. And that surfaces another issue that many people regularly forget, that intelligence agencies can only inform the leadership of the government and military. They cannot act on this intelligence themselves. In this case, and as it became known later on, Israeli government had deprioritized Gaza over other threats since there was no major incident for several months, reprioritizing the intel gathering to other threats. On the other hand, in the vast majority of the cases that we never get to learn, things work well and terror plots are disrupted silently and proactively. For instance, in Spy Spots Episode 3, we present the case of an Iranian IRGC terror plot in Greece that started from a threat report from the Israeli Mossad to the Greek AIP. More recently, in April 2024, Austria prevented a terrorist attack at a Taylor Swift concert in Vienna, thanks to a CIA threat report.
Authorities in Austria release a photo of one of the suspects involved in the planned attack on a Taylor Swift concert in Vienna.
Quoting the New York Times, David S. Cohen, the deputy director of the CIA, said the agency had provided information about 4 people connected to the Islamic State who were planning an attack. Some of the individuals arrested were found with bomb-making material and had access to a concert venue where several shows were scheduled to take place in the days after the arrests. They were plotting to kill a huge number, tens of thousands of people at this concert. "I'm sure many Americans," Mr. Cohen said at the annual intelligence summit just outside Washington, D.C. "The Austrians were able to make those arrests because the agency and our partners in the intelligence community provided them information about what this ISIS-connected group was planning to do." There are too many variables that can play a role, as shown by those examples, from competing priorities, slow vetting of the received intel, conflicting intelligence, and many other factors. But apart from the successful and unsuccessful handling of threat reports, there are some incidents that are worse. It's not unheard of for spy agencies abusing those warnings for their own benefit. Whether this is to distract the resources of their adversaries to focus on something benign, or to indirectly make them work for them against otherwise innocent individuals that they are after. For instance, as the Red Notice Monitor reported on September 27, 2022, Enes Kanter Freedom, the NBA player, was detained in Romania in 2017 when Turkey reported his passport missing on the Interpol database. After a media campaign to secure his release, Kanter Freedom gave a clear warning to the international community in an op-ed piece for the Washington Post. Erdogan's arms are long. He hands down anyone who opposes him. Turkey is one of the founding members of Interpol. The Turkish government is well aware of the organization's inner workings and how to manipulate them. For the past few years, Turkey has used Interpol to track political opponents and dissenting voices. They have not been using Interpol Red Notices, but have instead used Interpol's Stolen and Lost Travel Documents (SLTD) system. Turkey knows the SLTD system was not intended for that purpose. Another ugly situation is when terrorists are able to infiltrate spy agencies and feed them wrong information or manage to misdirect them through their actions, sufficiently enough to make them second guess or ignore any threat reports, giving them enough time to execute their deadly plots. One such case is likely the Ariana Grande Manchester Arena bombing of 2017, where, as it became known much later, MI5 had received warnings for the suicide bomber, but ignored them. Actually, The Guardian published the findings of MI5's internal investigation, resulting that Salman Zabedi returned from Libya 4 days before the blast would have been taken extremely seriously by MI5 had key pieces of intelligence been taken more seriously in the months before the blast. The spy agency could have found Abedi's homemade device stored in a car in Manchester if an investigation began at this stage. The attack might have been prevented if MI5 had found the vehicle. MI5 failed to share two significant pieces of intelligence with counter-terrorism police in the run-up to the blast, amid what Saunders described as a communication breakdown between the agencies. Abedi's family holds significant responsibility for his extremist beliefs, but he should have been referred to the anti-radicalization scheme PREVENT up to 2 years before the attack. But what wasn't written here was that the perpetrator was actually an MI6 and MI5 asset, not that far back before the attack. As we read in Declassified UK, will the truth about the UK's secret stage connection to the Manchester bomber ever be revealed? Not if MI5 and David Cameron can help it. Salman Abedi and his family fought on the same side as Britain during that war. He was taken to the conflict at the age of 16 by his father, and may have gained military experience and training there. Evidence emerged that the Abedis had joined militias, the February 17 Martyrs Brigade and the Tripoli Brigade, that overthrew Muammar Gaddafi's regime. Yet the inquiry did not probe how the British military and security services had supported those groups at the time, even though some information was available from open source material. And continues that evidence has emerged that MI5 and MI6 encouraged radicals such as the Abedis and other British Libyans based in Manchester to fight in Libya and allowed them to travel to the country, a hotbed of terrorism, for years afterwards. The agency should be required to say what it knows about any British collusion with the Abedis. At the inquiry, MI5 was allowed to give nearly all its evidence in secret, closed sessions. Another ugly situation is when nation-states ignore, or at least appear to ignore, intelligence to such degree that even when it goes public it has little response. For instance, earlier this year, Ahmed Massoud, the leader of the National Resistance Front, CIA's primary allied organization in the fight against the Taliban in Afghanistan until 2021, publicly stated the following.
It came to my attention before this interview that your father actually warned of imminent attacks on U.S. soil prior to his assassination, which, to my understanding, fell on deaf ears. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Now you're here, 20-something years later.
Same deaf ears.
Warning America that there's another coming attack. Is that falling on deaf ears as well?
Unfortunately, yes. It's like history repeats itself. And we all know where Ayman al-Zawahiri was hiding. And
we hope that this warning will not materialize, but it is worrisome that he had to go public because no US official was willing to listen to the once #1 clandestine ally of CIA in Afghanistan. In conclusion, almost always spy agencies will do what they can to prevent such threats through the duty to warn and threat reports. But in the real world, things are way more complicated. from politicians to spies and from terrorists to informants, there are many things that can and occasionally do go wrong. It's important to remember, though, that it's not all bad and dark. Numerous terrorist plots are disrupted constantly around the world thanks to those processes, and, in most cases, those never become known. Unless there is a political or foreign policy benefit to publicize them, it's typically safer to keep them hidden, since it won't disrupt the society, give food to conspiracy theories, or negatively impact the economy by making that country look less safe than it portrays itself to the global arena. Of course, in some cases, those incidents get accidentally discovered or leaked too. But still, in most cases, as the film The Recruit said,
"Our failures are known, our successes are not." It's a company motto.
and to be fair, this is not limited to spy agencies, but any security professional out there. From the security guard in the mall that stopped 10 pickpockets from entering, to a cybersecurity expert that blocked hundreds of phishing emails, or a patrol officer that detained a drunk person acting aggressively, or anyone else in the security space for that matter. Successes are rarely known because they aren't that exciting. Each success could have easily become a tragedy. So anytime you read news for the good, bad or ugly stories relate to the duty to warn and threat reports, don't forget that nothing's as it seems.